Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Super excited to be here with you again. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your listening to me. Now, you ever have a client say, I'm just not ready to commit. I'm just not ready to commit. And that's an interesting statement because where do you go from there? I'm not ready to commit. What do you say? Well, when will you be ready to commit? That's not the best approach. So what I want to do in this podcast is I want to frame a scenario where you might hear the I'm not ready to commit. And then I'm going to give you some solutions as to what you can do to move the sales forward. You ready? Here it comes. Client says, I'm not ready to commit. That's the problem. Now, let's take a step back. Let's say you're in residential sales. You're trying to sell them on a pool. Maybe you're selling windows, you're selling doors, you're selling landscaping, you're selling pest control. You get the idea. You're selling to a homeowner. And after a great presentation, we always move into the proposal phase and, get pricing on the table. That's what great salespeople do, right? We've gone through the educational phase. We've understood their needs. We've presented a decent, if not great solution. We now move in to putting the proposal on the table. And after reviewing the pricing, the client says, you know what, send me a formal proposal and give me a week or so. Send me a formal proposal, send me your final proposal, and then give me a week or so. And then what's the translation when you hear that? Well, one is that they're not ready to buy. That's one way of translating what they just said. Two, they're not ready to buy, but they're not ready to buy from you. Three could be is that they're going to use that information. You send them a bid, they're going to use that information and maybe use it to price it against other vendors to beat them down on price. This does happen. So when you hear this, I'm not ready to make a commitment, send me a formal proposal, what I want you to do is stay in the sales pipe. What do I mean by stay in the sales pipe? You ever see surfers? They always talk about stay in the pipe, stay in the tube, stay right in that sweet spot of selling. In their case, surfing. In your case, selling. So what does that mean? When the customer says, send me a formal proposal and give me a week or so, you know that if you go back to your office, you're going to spend an hour, maybe 2 hours putting a proposal together. You're going to send it to them, and what's going to happen? They're going to go dark after a day or two, right? You call them a week later, they're still dark. What do I mean by dark? They're just simply not returning your phone calls. So you know as a salesperson that you have to get some specific answers. You have to qualify that opportunity right there and then before you decide to go back to the office and put together a final proposal. Why waste time on a deal that's not going to close? Why waste time on a prospect who really isn't serious about wanting to buy your product or your service? So here's what you're going to say when the client says, send me a final or formal proposal. You're going to say, Mr. Customer, I'd be more than happy to follow up with a formal quote, but it'll only take me a few minutes to write it up if you're ready to move forward. Does that sound better? Or how does that sound? Now, what are we doing? We're asking the customer, I don't need to go back to my office. Let me go ahead and write one up right now. It'll only take a couple of minutes to put together a formal proposal. Does that sound good to you? How does that sound? Now, based on the customer's reaction to that statement, you'll know if you're dealing with a real opportunity or a person who isn't being genuine. So if I say something like, I can put the proposal together right now, put the numbers down, how does that sound to you? And if you start here and say, well, yeah, okay, go ahead and do that, but I still need to think about it. At that point, you know that you're dealing with somebody who's being disingenuous, not being very straightforward. You can also say something like this, Mr. Customer, I can give you a formal quote right now if you're ready to get started. So again, I can give you a formal quote right now. We can do this right here, right now, if you're ready to get started. Now, I understand that certain companies, certain services that you may offer is that you'll have to go back to the office and pull together a final proposal. I get that. But there's nothing wrong with trying to advance the sale if you can do the proposal right there and then. So if you have that ability where you can close the deal right there and then, where you can actually do the proposal right there and then, do not, I repeat, do not wait to go back to your office to send them a formal proposal. That's the formal proposal. That's the number. And then you're going to wait to see how they react. And you may get something like this. Well, I'm just not ready to commit. I'm just not ready to commit. So let's assume that that's what we're going to hear. I'm just not ready to commit. And again, what do you do in this situation? You said, look, we can do the proposal. How does that sound? We can do it right here. How does that work for you? Well, okay, that's great, Victor, but I'm just not ready to commit. And at this point, you have to kind of go in again to qualify the opportunity. You'll say something like this. I'm going to give you two ways to deal with this. When the customer says, I'm not ready to commit, here's option number one. When someone says to you the following, I'm not ready to commit, this is what you're going to say. Mr. Customer, when someone tells me they're not ready to commit, it usually means that they're not sure about the product, or you're still not comfortable with the level of information you have to make an informed decision. May I ask, which one is it? Is it the product, or you don't have enough information? Which one is it? Because really, those are the only two options, right? When you're looking at buying a product or a service, it's either you don't understand the product or you don't understand enough information or have enough information to make a buying decision. So let me repeat that statement again. Mr. Customer, when someone tells me they're not ready to commit, it usually means that they're not sure about the product, or you're still not comfortable with the level of information you have to make an informed decision. May I ask, which one is it? Now, see how polite that is? And what am I doing mentally to the customer? I'm funneling them. I'm giving them two options here. Is it product or is it information? Which one is it? Option number two. If you don't like that statement, try this one. Mr. Customer, when someone tells me they're not ready to commit, it usually means that they're not sure about the product, or you still have some lingering questions or concerns. May I ask, which one is it? And I want you to slow down. May I ask, which one is it? And again, if you can slow down your velocity, how fast you speak, drop your tone, and ask with a sincere curiosity. For example, Mr. Customer, when someone tells me they're not ready to commit, it usually means that they're not sure about the product, or you still have some lingering questions about or concerns. Which one is it? Because I'm here to help. See how I did that? So you have two options. And again, what you're looking for is the customer's response. How they respond will tell you how sincere they are about buying from you. This will tell you if it's worth going out and doing a quote. In other words, creating a formal quote to come back. So if the reaction is, well, I understand the product, Victor. I got the product, but there's still some questions over here. Well, great. Now we can have, in terms of interaction with the customer, with the prospect, now you could have a real conversation about what those concerns are. When you look at the two options, I like option two better. Let me repeat both options. Option one, when someone tells me they're not ready to commit, it usually means they're not sure about the product, or you still are not comfortable with the level of information you have to make an informed decision. May I ask, which one is it? That was number one. Number two, when someone tells me, Mr. Customer, they're not ready to commit, it usually means they're not sure about the product, or you still have some lingering questions or concerns. May I ask, which one is it? And again, slow down, really ask the question, but keep in mind that what you're looking for is to re-engage the customer. Because if the customer says, I'm not ready to commit, what are you going to say? Why? Why aren't you ready to commit? They won't know. But as soon as I present the only two options, is it the product, or don't you have enough information? Now, this is assuming that whatever I'm offering is within their price range. But they're going to say it's the product, or they don't have enough information. Well, let's talk about what information you don't have, Mr. Customer. Or if it's not the right product, let's talk about what features need to be in the product you're looking for. Whatever it may be, whichever they choose, at least now you're re-engaging them in a conversation, as opposed to just being, confused as to, what do you say when somebody says, I'm not ready to commit? Now you have an option. What you're going to do when they say, I'm not ready to commit, is it the product, or is it the level of information you have to make an informed decision? And again, what I want you to do is really kind of refine this so it sounds natural when it comes out of your mouth. Every time you hear my scripts, I've said this in the past, put it in your words, in your language, so it comes out naturally. But again, if you don't funnel them into product or information, they're simply just going to back off and not answer the question and just leave it lingering or hanging in the air. And that is the worst thing you want. You don't want to go back wondering, is this client serious or not? Anyway, keep in mind, there's nothing wrong with pushing the customer a little bit to give you more information. Is it the product or is it more information, Mr. Customer? And that is it for this Sales Influence podcast. Don't forget to leave me some feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Let me know what you think. As always, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, check out my online sales training platform, the Sales Velocity Academy. Again, we got 40 courses, 400 videos. This library is growing. We've priced it so anybody can get on the platform. For more information, go to www.salesvelocityacademy.com if you're serious about increasing your sales velocity. Lastly, I want to thank you. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.